In a burst of creative frenzy, Bengaluru-based writer Sharad Bailur churned out 7 novels between 2018 and 2022. They are The Telomere Problem, The House on Pali Hill, Darkness at Midnight, Nuclear Peril over Bombay, Not a Drop to Drink, The Ghost in the Machine, Arms in the Man, and The Dumb Doll in Alternative History. Just consider the plots of some of these 7 novels. They deal with themes as wide ranging as India's enduring fascination with Baba-Santism and how it mutates, a sinister plot to spike India's rivers with a slow acting but deadly poison, nuclear peril hanging over Bombay as tensions rise between India and Pakistan over terrorism, and Indian scientists cloning Madhubala, one of India's most iconic movie stars, 29 years after her death in defiance of medical ethics, and ghosts in machines which can infect and destroy, nuclear centrifuges, and destroy individual humans with an incurable disease, muscular dystrophy. Sharad Bailur describes himself as a generalist with a journalist's sensibilities, even though his professional career was in the public sector, cooperative sector, and private sector. A rationalist and agnostic, Sharad has written for most newspapers in India and enjoys an eclectic mix of reading from science, both theoretical and applied, to history, philosophy, and literature. Sharad Bailur spoke to my Chai reports from Bengaluru. Welcome to my Chai reports. Sharad, it's a great pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Between 2018 and 2022, you wrote 7 books, starting with The Telomere Problem, in which an Indian scientist clones the actress Madhubala 29 years after her death, and the latest, a what if political novel called Dumb Doll in Alternative History. That's quite a range, Sharad. How do you explain this burst of creativity?
It actually started quite simply. Uh, my brother challenged me to write a novel about cloning in general. It had nothing to do with Madhubala. But then when you write a story, the story has to have some kind of appeal. And I decided that Madhubala was a good and safe appeal as far as writing was concerned. So I decided to weave the story around Madhubala, her death, and then later on her resurrection,
Right.
essentially.
Yeah.
That was how the telomere problem started. But unfortunately, it had not occurred to me that it would require a fair amount of background reading and research. I managed to do that thanks mainly to Nature, the magazine called Nature.
Right.
You see, Nature gave me the freedom to sift through a number of articles which they had in their various issues, many of which they sent to me. And then with the help of that and with the help of magazines like Omni, in those days Omni was used to be available. I put it all together when I started writing the novel. After all, when you write a novel, you have to have background, and this was the background with which I started. But let me tell you, the telomere problem actually grew organically in the sense that I wrote it first, and then it didn't appeal to me. Then I wrote it again. Then that didn't appeal to me. Then I wrote it a third time, and I thought that I was not really going to be able to do it. But then you pushed me. You, you were the one who pushed me and said, no, write it and complete the job and give it to me. So I did that. And that is how that novel was done. And then you said, are you planning to write any more? And it struck me that if I could write one, I could write more.
Well, you make it sound so simple. For most people, it would be a massive struggle.
I don't know. Probably there is more to writing than I suspected in myself. But the fact is that I have never been a professional writer, and I have never been a journalist. I have written occasionally for various newspapers, but that has been about all because the jobs that I held were such that they
Right.
did not afford me the freedom to write the way I liked.
Yeah,
Most jobs don't give you the freedom to write. Most jobs, including the ones in journalism. A
that's true.
journalist cannot write what he wants. He has to write what the policy of his paper or magazine demands that he should write. You
Yeah,
you are aware of it. I don't have to tell you.
yeah.
Yeah. So given that, this was the freedom was something on which I decided I was going to let myself go.
Right.
So that is how the second novel started.
Interestingly, Sharad, I want you to dwell a bit on the telomere problem, the idea that an entire person can be resurrected. I
Yes,
think it's becoming pretty close to reality now. I'm
it
sure
is.
you.
Yes, yes,
And of course, there are serious ethical questions around it, not to mention some serious medical ones too.
yes.
But speculate a bit in your mind. What if someone like Madhubala were to be resurrected at this stage? What do you think will happen?
Um, except for the few bits of sensationalism that I have put in, my presumption is that it will go fairly according to what I have written. The reason for that is that I have stuck by the uh, existing knowledge of what can be done as regards cloning. When I started writing, I decided that I was not going to play around with the science. You see, and therefore it was absolutely essential that when somebody read my novel, it would not merely be not only sound truthful, it should appear to them if they read the background that,
Right,
well, hey, he's talking sense. It does work this way. So that kind of verisimilitude should be there. That was the main aim.
right. But in a situation like this, Sharad, say suppose this were really to happen, forget Madhubala, any other person.
Yeah.
We're looking at all kinds of questions, including the way the immediate family might react. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, to have someone dead for so long coming alive has the potential to upend everything, not just within the family, within the neighborhood, perhaps eventually even within societies.
That's
Uh,
right.
so how do you look at it from that standpoint?
See, I looked at it from a slightly different angle. The important point is that, as you rightly said, Madhubala is only a peg on which I put the story. I've hung the story. The
Yeah,
real story is not really about Madhubala at all.
yeah, it's not.
If you really look at it, the real story is about the future of living forever. That is the real story.
Right,
That if it is possible to generate, self-generate the telomeres in a human body in a manner, in a controlled manner, which prevents possibilities of any disaster, then it should be possible for that person to live forever. That was the one thing that I was very keen on talking about.
right,
The only thing I missed out was that I did not write about age regression.
right.
Somebody like me now, at the age of 76, becoming a young 35-year-old person, how can you regress your age
Yeah,
by regeneration of
right,
your body parts? That is one. The second thing was, how do you ensure that a person who's 35 years old remains at that age, biological age? If a person can be can have this necessary scientific this thing to ensure that he lives to that regresses or remains at that age, then it is a good thing. That was one. Then the second question that you asked was what would happen to society in general if this became a common thing?
Right.
One thing that would happen to society would be that you would have to forget about sex for procreation. Sex would only be for fun. There would be
Right.
no more procreation.
Right.
Or alternatively, this particular privilege will be given to the very few.
Well, you creating a sort of a class system of a different kind
Yes,
there.
it will create a class system. You see, the thing is, the ones who have the secret of eternal life will not pass it down the road to any and everybody.
Right.
They will ensure that it remains a secret with themselves, and they are not going to die.
Yeah.
Even if that the hoi polloi can count how many years, how old you are, they are not going to say anything about it. How
Yeah.
often have you heard about how old Mr. Modi is, for example, or Mr. Amit Shah? You
Right.
don't get to hear, or for that matter, how often do you hear about how old Mr. Rahul Gandhi is?
Right.
Everybody knows what their age is, but
Right.
it is never really mentioned in public. It is presumed that it is such and such.
Yeah.
But if the person continues to be at that age, now suppose Rahul Gandhi continues to be his age for the next 200 years, something is happening here. It is a kind of Dorian Gray situation.
It is.
It is a kind of Dorian Gray situation where a person is actually getting older, but he is not getting older because you cannot this. Now, obviously, under these conditions, people who are have this secret of eternal age will not allow that secret to be passed down to anybody.
True.
They will want a constant, continuing, renewed supply of human beings to continue to be there on their, like having an eternal supply of servants.
Exactly.
You see, what I'm saying is it is bound to create a class system
Yeah.
at a universal level, not merely national level.
Yeah. But in terms of if cloning can happen at the scale and sophistication at which you're describing,
Hmm.
what is to stop anyone from cloning more than one? I mean, there could be 1,000 Madhubalas.
Yes, there could be. In fact, if you go to Ira Levin's book, uh, The Boys from Brazil, Ira Levin wrote that
Yeah.
book, Boys
Yes.
from Brazil. He in that he clones a number of boys
Yeah.
who are given to various people, and they are all clones of Hitler,
Right.
Adolf Hitler.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
That's a scary prospect.
no, in fact, Ira Levin argues that nurture is more important than nature. That the boys from Brazil eventually don't turn out to be
To be Hitlers. Yeah.
the villains which Hitler had turned out to be.
Right.
That
No,
it was other factors like the German state, the mindset of the German people, all of those things contributed to making Hitler what he was. That is what he is trying to show there.
yeah. I mean, in the sense you're not genetically fanatical to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but we don't know
No, right.
what you pointed out is correct. You don't know. All of this is fine, but you don't really know. And it is always good to, you know, uh, uh, be more than cautious, more than ordinarily cautious in a
Right.
situation like this.
Yeah. To wrap up the Madhubala part,
Yeah,
beyond what you've written,
yeah.
have you thought about at what age would she be resurrected, and would she
I
remain
think
at that age?
we have mentioned something about her being resurrected at
Yeah.
22 or 23.
Right. Right.
So I have to go back into the
No, I think
manuscript.
you're right. You're right. It's around that period.
Around about the age of 22 or 23. Like for example, when she was acting in uh, that movie with Dilip Kumar, one of the earlier movies with Dilip Kumar,
Uh-huh.
uh, she acted in two movies with Dilip Kumar, black and white movies.
Right.
So I had that picture of Madhubala in my mind.
I see.
Yes, Amar, for example,
Yeah.
that is the picture I had of Madhubala in my mind.
Okay.
My presumption is she would be around 22, 23, not more than that.
Okay. To broaden a bit, although I'm sure a lot of these ideas must have been bumping around in your mind for quite some time, much earlier than you turned 70 when you wrote the telomere
No,
problem.
no, it started much earlier. You are absolutely
Right.
correct.
Right. Yeah. But I'm saying the fact that between 70 and 76, it is a period in the Indian context where people essentially just are waiting to die. Uh, you wrote 7 novels. I'm
Yeah,
trying to wrap my head around it. Not a lot of I don't know of anyone who would have done it at that age and in this quick a fashion. So
yeah.
tell me the process of how that happened.
In fact, the process was sort of building up over a period of time.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know, but if I don't know if I told you that the last novel which we published, The Dumb Doll,
Right.
now that was the one that I wrote first. That was not the last novel. I started writing The Dumb Doll as early as 1975,
I
if I'm
see.
not wrong, 75, 76. And it went through a number of iterations and a number of ways of writing it, and I finally gave it up.
Mhm.
I actually gave it up not once but three times because I thought I couldn't do it, and it would have remained that way if you hadn't pushed me.
True.
If you hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the credit for my writing goes to you. Not only that.
No,
You
you
see,
wrote them. I merely pushed you. For me, it was easy to push you. So,
it is like I remember when I was in school, I was told that I had to dive headfirst into the swimming pool. From the edge of the swimming pool, I had to dive into the pool.
right.
I'm one of those fellows who was a congenital coward. So I was terrified of diving into the pool. So then my physical instructor, the teacher who taught us how to swim, he came and stood beside me and he said, "See, I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you and you are going to get into the water. Once you get into the water, you know how to swim?" I said, "Yes." I said, "What's your problem?" "Here." And he gave me a push.
I see.
So it was like that. You were the physical instructor who gave me the push.
Okay. Your books also include what you call intelligence chronicles. Uh,
Yes,
one of which is called Darkness at Midnight,
that's right.
which imagines nuclear peril hanging over Bombay.
Yes.
Now, that's quite a thought. I would be interested to know how you came up with that.
Okay. That novel actually began with the attack on Bombay uh, in November of
26, yeah.
yeah,
2008, yeah.
it's called 26/11. Yeah. So when that attack on Bombay happened, uh, I thought that if somebody can simply walk to the shore in an ordinary boat and attack Bombay the way they did attack Bombay, with nothing other than guns in their hands, then it seemed to me that if they could remote control a boat and send it to land on Juhu Beach in the middle of the rainy season when there is nobody on Juhu Beach,
Right.
in the middle of the night, and then explode an atom bomb there, it can destroy Bombay. That thought occurred to me, and
Okay.
I tried digging through the science behind the possibility.
Mhm.
I tried digging through the science behind the possibility, and I talked to a number of people, and I found that it is perfectly feasible. It is frighteningly feasible, in fact.
I see.
Yes, if because the coast of Bombay, for all the talk about it being, oh no, it can't be done. There were so many people who told me it can't be done. But what do you mean by it can't be done? It has been done. What was 2611? It was done.
Right.
So therefore, to say it cannot be done is nothing but wishful thinking. So I said, okay, let us presume that somebody wants to try this trick. How would they go about doing it? That was one. The second thing was, who would do it? Now, obviously, the blame would fall on the Pakistani state, the state of Pakistan, and that they would do it because they have done 2611. Now, if it was Pakistan, the state which was to do it, then there would be massive retaliation from the Indian side, from the Indian defense forces, from the Indian nuclear bomb capabilities, and so on. So I said, how do you go about ensuring that this massive retaliation does not come about? One of the ways the massive retaliation will not come about will be if there is enough confusion sown in the minds of the world in general that
Right.
maybe the Pakistani state was not involved. Give it 10 days, give it 15 days, give it a month, and then it will die down over a period of time. People start losing interest.
Right.
So I said the simplest answer is to not blame Pakistan, but exactly like the Pakistanis had done in the case of 2611, blame it on terrorists in inverted commas, and say that they were the ones who were responsible for. From where did they get the bomb? We don't know.
Yeah.
Who is responsible? We don't know. We are not responsible. You are welcome to come and examine our nuclear facilities.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are any number of ways in which Pakistan could have got around that situation.
Right.
So and they still can if they want to. Even today, if Pakistan takes a decision to try this kind of trick, they still can. That is what I personally feel. And I think it is necessary that even if it is via a novel, I should keep the Indian establishment aware of this possibility.
Right. Right.
So that was the reason.
What is the most difficult part of writing novels, especially during what might be considered? Forget the retirement period part. I don't want to dwell too much on the retirement part, but it's a physical exercise. You have to sit and write. It requires some kind of physical discipline too. And for people to produce one, it takes a great deal out of them. In your case, like I said, it's 7 now. What
Yeah.
was the most difficult physical part of it?
Oh, the difficult part in writing is actually not the writing.
Okay.
As far as I can see, it is not the writing, it is the thinking.
Mhm.
Unless you got your story clear in your head, you don't start to write. That is one. Except in the case of when I started with my first novel, and as I told you, I repeatedly bumped my head against various walls.
Yeah.
Subsequent, all of them were planned and then written. But when I say planned, what I mean is that I had thought about how I was going to put what in. In fact, I would put which character in which chapter. Who are the characters who are going to be there, and in which chapter, which character would be there in which chapter.
Right.
That is the second part. Third part, the verisimilitude. The fact that it has to be made as real as possible. You see, once I got these things lined up, then I would write down, I would make a chapter summary of what would happen in which chapter.
Okay.
And once I wrote that down, then I would sit down and write individual chapters and expand on them. That is the way I did it, because I don't know any other way to. Nobody told me that this was the way to do it.
Right.
But to me, this seemed to be the simplest way to do it.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Once you establish the basic premise in all your novels, I've noticed that more often than not, your novels are propelled by a great deal of conversations. Is that a conscious choice, or it just happened?
In a way, you're right. Actually, what has happened is that I am not good at writing conversations. I'm not good at writing dialogue.
Okay.
I'm not at all good at writing dialogue. And therefore, it is first necessary to get the story down.
Okay.
as the second, as I told you, you write chapter outlines, and in the chapter outlines, you write the story down about who does what, and then you expand on each of those things by saying who says what when he does what.
Right.
I said otherwise there is no way in which I could write conversation. And I'm not. If you look carefully, that is one of my weaknesses. If you look carefully, I
Right.
don't seem to be able to write my dialogues with a great deal of felicity.
Right.
There is a certain stiltedness about the dialogues that I write.
Yeah.
So that is the point. I'm still trying to get over that. I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
Somebody has to help me.
Okay. How has been the response to these works? I'm sure a lot of people have read, your friends and others, who would have got back to say what they felt about them.
Well, some of them have said that they liked what they read,
Mhm.
but to be quite frank, novels are not the kind of things which get sold nowadays. Books don't get sold.
No, they
You-
don't.
Yeah, I mean, for example, even bookshops are closing. Barnes and Noble closed down
Right.
in the US.
Right.
Similarly, in India, Bombay's famous Strand bookstall closed down. Strand bookstall closed down here in Bangalore. It had a Bangalore branch. That also closed down. And the reason for that was quite easy to understand, and that is that Strand was not able to sustain itself financially.
Right.
Now, therefore, reading of books is in that was one of the reasons why I decided to write novels, because at least there people read it for entertainment.
Yeah.
If I started writing serious stuff, which I might well have tried, nobody would read it. My brother told me, "Well, your serious articles nobody reads."
True.
My brother's biggest criticism of my writing was that you write serious stuff and it goes over the heads of everybody and nobody reads it, which I thought was understandable. It was perfectly correct.
Yeah.
Why would anybody do that?
Yeah.
So the only alternative was to write novels. Now, even when it comes to novels, what kind of novel do they want? Now, the telomere problem was science fiction. How many people read science fiction? Even amongst fiction readers, the readers of science fiction is a small percentage.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, that is one. And that is the reason why, when you asked me this question about the Intelligence Chronicles, I decided on the Intelligence Chronicles for precisely this reason, that at least it would reach a wider audience.
Right.
You see? But I didn't want to make it repetitive. So after 4 or 5, I decided that I'd sort of call a halt to it, even if it is temporary, unless something else cropped up.
Right. We have discussed this. All your novels, I think, are filmic and filmable. There has to be a way to option them where someone can pick up, because these are wonderful films to make. A lot of them can be turned into great thrillers, including the Madhubala story, for instance.
Including the Madhubala.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would be a very sharp film. Imagine I can actually see the whole film in front of me. I wish I had the means to make it. I would have made it in a jiffy. But if someone here in the US picks it up as a plot line, it would be terrific.
Yes, in fact, when I wrote the Intelligence Chronicles, you'll have noticed
Yeah.
that each story, one story moves very easily into the second story, which moves easily into the third story. There is a continuing, what shall we say? The characters continue to remain much the same,
Yeah.
and there is constant references to the earlier stories in the latter stories.
Right. It has a web series quality. It can be an interesting web series.
It's a kind of web series. It has a web series quality.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what if that was a possibility. So that's why I wrote those 5.
Then I know one has to find. I think the best would be to find a sort of an agent in New York, because they are. This has nothing to do with our interview. I'm just thinking aloud. There is a company in New York that I used to know. They option books for cinema, so maybe one should give it a shot. To change gears a bit, Sharad, professional career saw you work in the banking sector, in the cooperative sector, and in the private sector.
That's right.
What were the main differences in those three areas?
Oh, they were totally different. But one thing I realized is that working in the bank and working in the cooperative sector had a certain, demanded a certain level of integrity and honesty about the job that I did.
Hmm.
You see, when I worked for the State Bank of India, nobody told me that you have to tell lies about the State Bank of India.
Right.
Similarly, when I worked with Dr. Kurian in the National Dairy Development Board, he not once did it occur to him, forget about telling me, that I should say things in favor of the National Dairy Development Board, which were not strictly true. But that does not apply to the private sector.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
In the private sector, a person handling public relations is a person who is not giving information. He is a person who is hiding information.
Exactly.
You see, that is what is, and that is why I decided that I can't do this anymore,
Right.
and I gave it up.
I'm very interested in your work with the extraordinary Dr. Verghese Kurian, the father of the milk revolution.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me about that. He was a remarkable figure, and you worked closely with him. What stood out to you when you worked with him?
What stood out with him was his absolute ease with which he met and talked with people, irrespective of their importance in real life.
Mhm.
I have seen him talk to the Queen of the Netherlands and her husband about dairying in Holland with the same ease as he talked to the Minister for Agriculture of Kyrgyzstan, who had come down to find out how dairying was handled by the cooperative sector in India.
I see.
And in also, as a matter of interest, the chairman of the cooperative dairy board of Pakistan,
Okay.
yes, who had come down to find out how we handled the cooperative dairying job work that was being handled. Essentially, the National Dairy Development Board was set up to replicate the Amul style of cooperatives in other parts of the country.
Right.
So that is how you got Sudha in Patna, then Gokul in southern Maharashtra, Kolhapur, and so on. There are, I think, a large number of cooperative dairying marketing institutions in all the states of the country today, of India.
Right.
And that is how our output of milk has gone to the levels at which it has.
Right. What were the main elements behind the success of the milk revolution that began in Anand, in Gujarat, in what became now the legendary Amul model,
Yeah.
which is followed worldwide? Since you were at the heart of it in many ways, what do you remember of those times?
Well, the first thing that struck me was what Dr. Kurian said. He said, see, we must remember that people are much the same everywhere. Whether they are in India, whether they are in Pakistan, whether they are in Asia, anywhere, or whether they are in Africa, people, general human nature is much the same everywhere. Therefore, the desire to help yourself, comes first.
Right.
You will first help yourself, then you will think of all the bigger things about being good to others and all that comes later. But you will first help yourself. So he says that is the one thing that we cannot forget when we do even cooperative dairying.
Hmm.
Only thing is that here we say that the marketing model, the marketing operation will buy the milk from the individual farmer at a price not lower than the ruling price of milk in the market. Now, if the ruling price of milk is, say, 10 rupees to the liter, then he will not be forced to offer his milk to the cooperative at less than 10 rupees.
Right.
Because if that is so, then there would be a problem. Now, that is one. Second, all members of the cooperative became members of the cooperative at nominal fees, which they paid once in their lifetime. And it was no more than 20 rupees during my time when I was there. And it started with 1 rupee to begin with. So you pay 1 rupee,
Yeah.
become a contributing farmer. That's it. And after that, you give the milk to the cooperative. The cooperative tests the milk for purity because you might fool them. You might want to fool them.
Yeah.
It ensures that the quality of the milk is okay, accepts the milk and pays the farmer on the spot. Because the farmer doesn't have money. He needs money immediately. So it was essential that the farmer is paid immediately. Now, these were the essential small things, like, that prices would be not less than the ruling price in the market, or that the farmer would be paid on the spot. Now, these were essential to the cooperative model, which finally ended up being Amul.
Right. Given your long experience as a banker in the State Bank of India,
Yeah.
at this stage, banking seems to be in great ferment in India as well as even here. And I think it's cyclical. Banks have always in India been, they always seemed as if they are in ferment in terms of recoveries, etc. What's your broader vantage point as having been a banker for a long time? What do you think ails the banking sector?
Yeah, I can only talk about the banking sector as it is in India, and that too, my experience is only of banks which are owned by the government, not banks which are in the private sector.
Right.
Because I have never worked for a private sector bank. So, as far as banks in the public sector are concerned, which is 85% of the banking system in India even today,
Right.
my experience is that the banks do what its owners tell them to do in exactly the same way as private sector banks do, by doing what their owners tell them to do. What are the policies set by the owners are the policies that are followed by the banks. In the case of private banks, it is shareholders. In the case of public sector banks, it is the government.
Right.
Finally, it becomes the government which tells the Reserve Bank of India what the bank should do. Reserve Bank of India passes the instructions down to the commercial banks, the nationalized commercial banks, and those are the policies which are followed by the banks. The problem is that very often that the government can ask them to follow policies which are not good in purely banking terms. Like, for example, they can ask them to lend in sectors which are not likely to be bankable or financially viable.
Right.
That can happen. Or there can be instructions issued which are patently unreasonable because the people at the top don't know what is happening at the bottom. This also is possible. So, given all that, my experience is that what the banks have done today in India is quite different from what the banks were doing when I was working for the bank. Sometime in late 1900s, that early 2000s, the banks in India started computerizing their entire operations.
Right.
And about 10 years ago, about 20 years ago, all the operations were computerized to the extent that there was no such thing as manual banking at all. All the banking started being handled by computers and by a core operation system, which, for example, the State Bank of India set up in somewhere near Thane in Maharashtra. And all the operations of the State Bank of India all over the country and abroad were being handled by that core banking office. Now, the same principle was followed subsequently by all other nationalized banks. Unfortunately, a number of the nationalized banks which followed that system, they did not follow the necessary precautions. As a result, and also they did not follow other precautions like for example, maintaining uh, only the absolutely necessary amount of staff. They should not overstaff their branches. Now these are things which uh, were a problem in India, because we do have a very strong union movement which handles banking, which is there in the banking sector, which is supposed to protect the employees from the what do they call it? They call it uh, the tyranny of the management.
Okay.
You might put it that way. Even if the management is not being tyrannical, the unions are by definition anti-management.
Yeah.
So given all that, it does become a problem for handling banks. Now, the State Bank was able to negotiate with great success, and they were able to get the unions to tone down their rhetoric, and that is why the State Bank, you will not hear much about activity in the State Bank nowadays.
Yeah.
But you do hear, but even in spite of that, the State Bank of India has had to amalgamate all its subsidiary banks into itself. So today now you do not have State Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur, you don't have State Bank of Patiala, State Bank of Travancore, State Bank of Mysore. All of these subsidiary banks have been now brought into the State Bank of India fold.
Right.
They have become part of, and the State Bank of India has actually grown even bigger than it used to be. They could not do that in the case of the other public sector banks. So they amalgamated them in whatever manner they could see fit. That is why today you do not have syndicate bank, because syndicate bank has become part of Union Bank of India.
I see.
Yeah, and so on. A number of these banks have got amalgamated with other banks to ensure that they are bigger now, and therefore they can sustain themselves more easily.
Yeah. Just last couple of things, Sharad. One is, why do you think public sector banks lend themselves so easily to staggering con jobs? It's always happened, be it Harshad Mehta or anything else that followed after that. Is it the leadership crisis? Is there corruption at senior levels? Why is it that a lot of people get away by taking massive loans without any significant collaterals?
From you see, much of that has been happening. Harshad Mehta happened when I had left.
Okay.
I had left a year earlier in 1991, and Harshad Mehta happened in April of 1992.
Right.
Harshad Mehta's scam happened in April 1992. I left in October 1991.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I know it secondhand. I know what happened secondhand. In a situation like the Harshad Mehta case, there was genuine neglect on the part of a number of people who were involved in the Bombay main branch.
I see.
That is what I had heard. I don't have the complete details because I didn't go into the. In fact, there is a movie that has come out, which is
Yeah.
which was being shown, and but I had left the bank. I had left the bank in 1991 October,
Yeah.
and this thing happened in April 1992.
Yeah. No, I'm saying even if you forget the specifics of this scandal, I'm saying that
Yeah.
generally, as a rule, my perception has always been that for some reason, these public sector bank leaderships are remarkably amenable to granting massive amounts for reasons which may not entirely seem sound in banking
Yes,
terms.
yes. Right now the Adani Group has got a lot of loans given to it by the State Bank of India in the thousands of crores,
Right.
and the State Bank is not able to really answer why they did what they did. I've been observing that.
Right.
But to be honest, I am now as much an outsider as you are.
Right.
because I have been out of the bank since 1991. That is a long
No,
time.
true. It's a long time. No, but again, the intelligent observation would be that they're almost being treated as government ATMs, uh, favoring people, influential
Instead,
business houses.
yeah, instead of looking at it from the bottom, let us look at it from the top.
Exactly.
Let us say that instructions come down from the government or
Yeah.
from the political leadership,
Right.
okay, saying
Yeah.
that you have to do certain things, and or else. Now, if somebody was to say no, then there is always an or else.
Yeah. It's always
Otherwise,
hanging there.
otherwise it will not work. So
Yeah.
therefore, once that or else is there, then the issue arises: how do you handle a situation like that? And there, I think the people in the banks who are exposed only to banking and nothing else, they have spent their entire life doing banking and nothing else. I have found this to be true when I was also working in the State Bank of India, that 99.9% bankers are appallingly ignorant of the world in general. They only know about their banking and they are not interested.
Right.
They just are not interested in the rest of the world. If you talk to a banker even today, you will hear him talking nonsense about the world. If you ask him a simple thing like how many members of parliament are there in the Indian parliament, they will not be able to give you a clear answer.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That is amazing. I mean, but that is the way it is.
Yeah.
So their general awareness of the world around them is strictly limited to what they do when they go to work, what they do during the work, and what they do after they come back home.
Right.
They're not bothered about anything else.
Yeah.
Now,
No,
that kind it's a kind of willful ignorance as far as I can see. I cannot believe that people can be that
yeah.
willfully ignorant. But then
Right.
that is true.
Yeah. You know, to take you back a little bit to your childhood, you went among the schools that you went to was the iconic Rajkumar College in Rajkot.
Yeah.
Was Peter Rogerson the principal then?
Yeah. There was a gentleman by the name of Winterblythe.
I see.
Winterblythe.
Okay.
Big British name. I've never heard such a
It
big
sounds extremely
English.
British.
He was the principal when I was taken by my father to join Rajkumar College in the kindergarten.
I see.
I only did kindergarten in Rajkumar College, nothing
Oh,
else.
I see. Okay, so your memory is very hazy of that.
Very hazy. I was
Okay.
barely 6 when I
Okay.
was taken there. And it was Mr. Winterblythe, the principal, who told because you see what my father did was he had big ambitions about his sons.
Mhm.
Now my elder brother, who's older than me by almost 10 years,
Mhm.
he what was to be admitted to the 10th class,
Okay.
while I was to be admitted to the kindergarten class. So my brother did 1 year in Rajkumar College in the 10th class, and one day my father got a call from Mr. Winterblythe saying that there is an advertisement of the government of India saying offering scholarships in public schools, merit scholarships in public schools, and while your older son is not eligible for that scholarship because of his age, your younger son is eligible and you should apply for him,
Okay.
which was very nice of Mr. Winterblythe to do. He went out of his way to tell my father about it.
I see.
Yes. And then my father looked up the newspapers because my father was at that time the editor of the English version of the Jai Hind in
Oh,
Rajkot. The
oh,
Jai
I
Hind,
see.
yeah, the Jai Hind which comes out of Ahmedabad
Yeah, yeah,
nowadays.
yeah.
Yeah. It used to be owned by a gentleman by the name of Babubhai Shah.
Right.
And Babubhai Shah's son, I forget his name, he owned it till recently, till he passed away.
Okay.
Babubhai Shah used to own Jai Hind. And it was Babubhai Shah who dragged my father from the Illustrated Weekly and
Oh, I see.
brought him to the Jai Hind and told him, "Can you start an English daily for us?"
Okay.
we started with that. Everything from typefaces to how the layout of the paper in those days, if you can remember,
Yeah.
it was terrible.
It was
Anyway,
linotype,
it was linotype.
molten lead. Yes.
No, no. The thing was, even when my father took up the job, he did not even know how to do it because they didn't have linotype in Rajkot.
Oh, I see.
There had to be compositors who will sit down and compose the entire newspaper letter by letter
Right.
in a block,
Yeah.
you know, by hand. The entire composition was
Right.
compositing was done by hand,
Hey, that was the case even when I started in 81 at the Free Press Journal. They were doing it physically, block by block.
block by block. Yes.
Yeah, and like I said, molten lead used to be the
Only the Times of India had linotype machines.
okay.
So far as I recall, only
Yeah.
the Times of India had. There were two brand names. One was Linotype, the other one was called Intertype.
Okay.
And yeah, and Times of India had both brands of these machines, on which you could type, and the letters would fall in correctly.
Right.
But again, it meant that somebody had to be there to do the
Indeed.
editing, and the editing was terrible. It was very difficult
No, it
because
was.
it meant that you had to take out that block, take out the lead piece, put a new
Exactly.
lead piece, get the entire thing to be done all over again. Therefore, the typists had to be very, very accurate.
And they were excellent, actually. A lot of them were excellent.
Yeah, they were excellent.
Yeah.